Hi folks! The Filipino P here, and I haven't done a candlelight culture video in a long time, so today is the day. Here's a dozen of the weirdest things about life in the Philippines. If you haven't been here yet, get ready to hear some rather bizarre stuff. And if you're a veteran expat, see how many of these things you've already experienced. Our customs might seem kind of strange, but it's definitely more fun in the Philippines. Now, since it's the beginning of January, our first unusual set of practices involves New Year's traditions. If you ever wondered why Filipinos are so obsessed with the number 12 this week, it's because we have two rituals that demand a dozen pieces of fruit. We're supposed to put 12 pieces of brown fruit, which means stuff like apples and oranges, but not bananas, on our dining room table, so that we'll be blessed with good fortune for the coming year. Now, for some families, just having any fruit at all would be blessing enough. But if you want to multiply your good luck, make sure it's exactly 12. And that goes for this next one too. If you're wanting to find true love, crawl under the table with precisely a dozen grapes just before the bells begin to toll at midnight on New Year's Eve. With each stroke of the clock, and yes, I said clock, there's an L in there, eat one of the grapes, and by 12 minutes into the new year, you'll be guaranteed to meet your soulmate. Do Filipinos actually believe this? Yes. Does it actually work? Come on, don't be silly. Now, this next one can be a real pain in the butt. If you've ever been anywhere in the Philippines, you've probably heard a sound like this, even inside your own house. Tak-mm, tak-mm. Now, I know my imitation sucks, but you might recognize it anyway. It's the very common sound of the gecko. Geckos can be some of the most annoying creatures on the planet because they yell at each other all day and all night, and once they get into your house, they ain't leaving. But geckos are so cute, right? Until they poop on your head. They have certain favorite pooping spots, like when they're up in the ceiling or above a door frame, and when they need to let loose, it's bombs away, and they don't give a rip if you happen to be standing directly underneath them when they drop a deuce. The gecko poo is some nasty stuff that carries salmonella bacteria, so it's a good idea to get rid of them as soon as possible. But don't even think about trying to touch it, because a gecko can actually stick to your skin like super glue, and if you try to pull them off, be prepared to redefine your understanding of pain. Now, Filipinos usually just let them be and put up with the noise and the poo, but they drive you foreigners absolutely crazy. So the safest way to get them to leave is to hit them with the same thing that drives away a vampire: garlic. Geckos hate garlic for some reason, so just spray a little garlic extract at the entry points of your house and no more geckos. Unfortunately, the smell has the opposite effect on Filipinos, so you might end up attracting your in-laws and trading one kind of pest for another. Pick your poison. So this next one's kind of funny, but Filipinos take it very seriously. We don't talk about it in public, but we're all aware of it and we all know the rules. Have you ever noticed that when you're eating with Filipinos, we never take the last scoop of rice, the last donut, or the last slice of pizza? Especially if you're a guest or you're the oldest person at the table. We always leave the last bit of food, which is called the shame piece. So why do we do that, and what happens if you eat it? Well, it's an old tradition that's supposed to show individual restraint and to show respect for other members of the group. It's also a way to be sure that guests always have something to eat, and no one wants to take food out of a hungry guest's mouth. What usually happens is a kind of Mexican standoff, with all the diners eyeing each other, as well as the remaining piece of food, to see who's hungry enough to accept the shame. But here's where it gets even funnier. Even if you're just eating with your Filipino wife or girlfriend, the rules still apply. And you'll probably notice that she never takes the last chicken wing or the last strip of bacon. Instead, she's probably gonna play the fraction game, where any piece of food can be split in half again and again. She'll cut the piece of bacon in two, eat one half of it, and wait to see if you'll take the other half, ending the game. If not, she'll keep splitting the remaining half into smaller and smaller bits until there's just a crumb left, which either person can grab without activating the shame rule. So the next time you notice her doing this, just go ahead and grab the last half, okay? So she doesn't have to keep doing math with the food on the plate. See the cool stuff you learn when you watch my videos? And for those of you who live under the same roof with a Filipina, you might have noticed that we don't seem to realize how leaving the lights on actually costs money. Oh, we understand that electric bills exist, but if we can't actually see the electricity being used up, somehow it just doesn't register in our brains that we're adding to the bill. We also leave the lights on at night if we're in big space, or at least what we call a big space, which is anything more than 2 rooms, and we do that because we're afraid of ghosts. I know it sounds silly, but we're used to small spaces. So when you guys bring us home to the West and put us inside these gigantic 1,500 square foot mansions, we get nervous and scared, and we start clicking the lights on to be sure there's no grudge in the corner. Living in a big house like that just isn't something we're used to. So we also make other annoying mistakes, like leaving doors open when you're trying to heat a room up or cool one down. Because we've never had to think about airflow before. So just give us some time and try to be patient. And before you know it, we'll be on to the next strange behavior, like this one. Have you ever noticed that when a Filipino buys a TV or a new appliance, we never take the plastic film off of it? You guys peel it off as soon as you bring it home, but we leave it on permanently, or at least until it gets all torn up and nasty looking. The reason we do that is because we're proud of the fact that we could afford something that was new instead of something we bought from a friend or got from the second-hand store. It's kind of a way to brag, and it's also a good way to protect the product, but it's mostly just bragging. So don't be surprised when your Filipino looks at you with an expression of horror when you start peeling the film off the edges of your new TV. And another thing you're probably going to disagree about is time. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of Filipino time, but you probably didn't know that there's a formula for it. If a Filipina says she'll be there in 5 minutes, it means she's leaving her house in 30 minutes. If you invite a Filipina to a party and tell her it starts at 6, there's no way she'll be there until 9. Neither will any other Filipino guest. But if there's a sale on shoes and the store opens at 10 a.m., she'll be waiting outside before the sun comes up. It's all about priorities. Now, I know you guys think it's rude and disrespectful and a waste of your time, and it really pisses you off, but it's not something that's ever gonna change. So if you decide to live in the Philippines, just learn to adapt by telling people your party starts at 3 p.m. Now, here's a Filipino tradition you really need to understand so you don't get surprised by it. And it's the exact opposite of the way you think it is. When you're in the Philippines, people might seem really interested to know when your birthday is. And when they find out, they love to invite you out for a birthday celebration with all the bells and whistles, a roast pig, giant platters of spaghetti, and enough beer to inebriate the entire neighborhood. Sounds pretty friendly, right? Well, the thing is, in our culture, it's the birthday boy who pays for everything. So what you might assume is a kind gesture is actually a request for free food. And speaking of food, there's a very common utensil that's gonna be conspicuously absent at mealtime: a knife. Filipinos rarely use them for everyday meals, and even at most restaurants, the only thing you'll find inside your napkin is a fork and spoon. So what gives? How the heck can you eat steak without a knife? Well, Filipinos can cut through just about anything with a spoon, even meat. And what we usually do is hold the spoon in our right hand and a fork in our left. And we use the spoon to cut up our food and then shovel it onto our fork and into our mouth. It looks pretty strange to you, and you wonder why we don't just use a sharp knife to cut our food, but there's a couple good reasons. The first is, if we don't have to have something, it's cheaper not to. So if we don't really need knives, then why buy them? It also means there's one less utensil we have to wash. There's also a theory that when the Spanish invaded, they didn't let us have knives because they didn't want us to have any weapons. But since we worked in the rice fields with machetes in our hands, that theory doesn't make a lot of sense. But we used to not have any utensils at all. We ate with our hands, similar to the way Indians do it. And it wasn't until the Spanish came that we started using tools to eat with. It's interesting to notice that Filipinos never adopted chopsticks like a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia. But in any case, Filipinos have a different relationship with our eating utensils. We also have a different relationship with our concept of safety. And once you get over here, you're gonna see stuff that'll have you shaking your head. We ride motorbikes at night with no headlights. We ride babies on the handlebars with no helmets. If that happened in your country, the parents would have their kids taken away and they'd be put under the jail. In the Philippines, it doesn't even raise an eyebrow. And while you guys are shocked at how we don't consider the dangers of our actions, to us, you overthink things. You plan everything down to the most minute detail. And you have to know in advance every little thing that's gonna happen, from the time you wake up till the time you close your eyes again, which either drives us crazy or makes us laugh. Filipinos are more about going with the flow. We don't really plan anything, and we pretty much live day to day. Now, I'm certainly not saying that's the best way to be, and we could certainly learn a lot from you guys and your Western mindset. But maybe you could learn a little bit from us too, like how to slow down and relax and make fun of yourselves, and we'd be happy to help you with that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Candlelight Culture, and I'll be back on Tuesday with something new. Until then, I hope you'll come check out my Patreon page, where we not only talk about all things Filipino, but we have a lot of fun in the chat rooms. And I can give you practical advice when it comes to things like planning your trip and what your Filipino really means when she says stuff you don't understand. I hope to see you there. Till next time, folks. If you think about it, I'm kind of like a Hooters girl without the Hooters, serving you exactly what you need. A double shot of hot, fresh content twice a week. The only thing I ask for my service is a thumbs up on this video, subscribing to my channel, and hitting the notification bell so you know when your next meal is ready. To help you decide what to order, check out this delicious assortment of great choices. Now, what can I get ya?